Welcome to the Elite Universe, Commander. If you're looking for an orientation on this decade-spanning game, you've come to the right place. This is the meta-lore, the ongoing story of Elite Dangerous. At the beginning of 2024, the situation for Elite Dangerous looked grim. The previous year had been a particularly difficult time for Frontier Developments, with the closure of their independent publishing arm, Frontier Foundry, and sales of the licensed Formula One management games had also been lackluster. Frontier's strategy had been to focus efforts on licensed products throughout the year, with the hope that another franchise, Warhammer, would prove to be lucrative. A new game, with the slightly unwieldy title of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin, was their flagship product going into the Christmas period. This launched in November 2023 and, there's really no way to sugarcoat this, totally crashed and burned. The financial impact of this was, as couched in the corporate obfuscation common to such announcements, a restructure. In practical terms, this was a slew of redundancies across the company. Elite Dangerous had been ticking along reasonably well, with the narrative focused almost exclusively on the Thargoid War, a curiously drawn-out invasion of the bubble by these nefarious aliens bent on, well, not quite taking over everything. Very little else in the game was updated, and there had been no new ships or significant content injections, nor was there any communication from Frontier themselves on the future of the game. Long-standing viewers of this channel may notice a distinct pattern here. With parlous finances, it was easy to be concerned that not only might Elite Dangerous's future be in jeopardy, but Frontier Development's own position might be equally precarious. Parts of the fan community made significant efforts to revitalise the Elite Dangerous player base in the hope that Frontier would see that an investment in the game's future would be worthwhile and potentially lucrative for them. Whether this was noticed is unknown, but Frontier did eventually break their silence and announce that a new streaming show, known as Frontier Unlocked, would commence shortly. Rather than having individual channels for their games, all games would be represented in the stream. Elite Dangerous was billed in last place, presumably to boost viewer numbers as high as possible, for as long as possible. That said, the content of the revised stream caught many by surprise. Frontier announced that not only would a series of new features be arriving, but they would be accompanied by some new ships, something that hadn't occurred for over 5 years by this point. It was safe to say that the community at large blinked in surprise and delight. The first updates to the game continued to concentrate on the Thargoid invasion, bringing some new technologies for players to deal with the Thargoid Titans and ultimately start the process of defeating them. Whilst entirely predictable from a narrative perspective, the events were handled with some aplomb, and the destruction of the first Titan Tyrannus was a spectacular moment that will be recalled fondly for many years to come. Throughout the rest of the year, Titans were destroyed in sequence. Salvage technology from the wreckage was used as the plot device to introduce new enhanced space travel capability known as Super Cruise Overcharge, quickly dubbed the SCO Drive. This provided the ability for players to boost in Super Cruise, both with greater acceleration and top speed, at the cost of high fuel consumption, heat generation, and rather erratic ship handling. However, it was a boon for explorers in particular, leaving the gravity wells of planets. It was a clever move on Frontier's part, using a plot device to work around one of the biggest issues with the game, namely the artificially long amount of time it took to move from one locale to another, something that many had been pointing out for a long time. It was gratifying to see that Frontier did learn their lesson here and make a positive addition to the game. Other additions were less well received. The Arc Store was given what was called a revamp, but essentially it was a price increase, and some pre-built ship types were also made available, which included some modest modifications in engineering. Most controversially, the new ships were being made available for early access in exchange for real money purchased through the Arc Store, though they would be available to purchase for in-game credits in due course. Some were quick to accuse Frontier Developments of adopting a pay-to-win philosophy. Engineering changes were also promised, aiming to tweak this overly complex part of the game in favour of actual engineering rather than the tedious grind of gathering materials. And it was also announced that power play, one of the least popular aspects of the game, would be getting a complete overhaul with the aim of promoting greater player engagement. The new ships were, naturally, the most welcome aspect of the new announcements. First to arrive was the Python Mark II, a ship dedicated to combat, rather than the multi-purpose nature of its older cousin. It was followed by the Type 8, an industrial-style ship aimed at trade and mission running. A third ship, in the form of the Mandalay, was an exploration-focused vessel. The final ship provided was another Cobra, this time a Mark V. As welcome as this content was, one more major feature was announced: player-driven colonization, which was aimed to allow for expansion of the bubble by player activity. Whilst few details are available at this stage, this feature seems to suggest that Frontier plans, at least for the short to medium term, to finally treat Elite Dangerous as a live service game. The Thargoid War narrative was brought to a close with the destruction of the final Titan Kossajo, which had moved into Earth orbit as part of the finale. Frontier published a video highlighting what they considered to be the high points of the last 10 years of the game's history. It had several notable omissions, which other content creators were quick to fill. Player sentiment, as measured by online interactions, appears far more positive as we enter 2025, and by the few available metrics, player numbers also seem to have been significantly boosted, and appear to be almost as high as during some key moments over the last decade. Certainly 2024 has been one of the best years for Elite Dangerous in recent history, particularly when compared to what went immediately before, and it can be said that it rivals both the investment and attention to detail that was present in the early days of development and the Horizon update. Hopefully, Frontier will continue to sustain this effort for many years to come, and not allow either their communication or commitment to the game to wane, as it has done in the past.